You don't wake up one day and decide to rebuild your life. It usually starts after something falls apart, maybe slowly, maybe all at once. Plans don't work out. People change. Things you trusted stop feeling stable. And suddenly you're left with this quiet question, now what? Not dramatic, not loud, just real. Let me say this straight. Rebuilding your life isn't about motivation. It's not about watching one video and suddenly feeling unstoppable. That feeling fades, fast. What actually changes things are habits, small ones, the kind you repeat even when you don't feel like it. Stoicism isn't about being emotionless, it's about being steady. It's about learning how to think clearly when everything feels messy, how to stay grounded when life doesn't go your way, how to rebuild without rushing. And yeah, this part matters. You don't rebuild everything at once. That's where people mess up. They try to fix their whole life in one push. It doesn't work. You burn out, you quit, you go right back to where you started. Instead, you rebuild piece by piece, one habit at a time, one decision at a time. Not perfect. Let me be real with you. How you start your morning decides more than you think. Not your entire life, but definitely your direction for the day. And most people lose that direction within the first few minutes. You wake up, and the first thing you do is grab your phone. Messages, notifications, social media. Your mind instantly fills with other people's thoughts, problems, opinions. Before you've even had a moment to think for yourself, your attention is already gone. That's the problem. Your day didn't start with you. It started with noise. And once your mind enters that reactive state, it stays there. You're not choosing what to focus on. You're responding to whatever shows up. So here's the shift. Don't start your day like that. Seriously, pause, even if it's just for a minute. Sit up, take a breath, don't reach for anything yet. Just give your mind a second to wake up without interference. Then ask yourself one simple question. What actually matters today? Not everything, just one or two things that truly move your life forward. That's it. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to figure everything out. You just need direction. Because once you have that, your actions become clearer. You're not jumping between tasks. You're not reacting to every distraction. You're moving with intention. And yeah, I know, it sounds small, too simple even, but don't underestimate it. This is where control begins, not in big decisions. In small, quiet moments like this, if you can start your day without chaos, you've already done something most people don't. You've taken control of your attention. And honestly, that's everything. Because where your attention goes, your energy follows. Try it tomorrow. No phone, no noise, just a minute of clarity. All right, this one sounds simple, but it's where most people struggle the most. Because in theory, everyone understands it. In practice, almost no one actually lives it. There are things in your control, and there are things that aren't. That's it, that's the whole idea. But the problem is your mind doesn't respect that boundary. It tries to control everything. Think about your day. How much time do you spend thinking about things you can't control? Other people's opinions. What someone said yesterday. What might happen next week. How something will turn out. You replay it, you analyze it, you stress over it, as if thinking harder will somehow change it. Let me interrupt you here. It won't. No amount of thinking will change what is already outside your control. And the more you focus on it, the more drained you feel. Because you're investing energy into something that gives nothing back. This is where Stoicism becomes practical. Not philosophical. Practical, because it forces you to draw a line. Simple. What can I actually control here? Your actions, your effort, your decisions, your response. That's it. Not the outcome. Not how people react. Not how everything turns out in the end. And this is where people get uncomfortable. Because letting go of control feels like giving up. It feels like weakness. It feels like you're not doing enough. But it's the opposite. You're just focusing on what actually matters. Let's break it down. Imagine you're working towards something, a goal, a plan. You put in effort, you do the work, but the result? Not fully in your hands. There are variables you can't control. Timing, other people, unexpected changes. Now most people do this. They work. But at the same time, they constantly worry about the outcome. Will this work? What if it fails? What will people think? And that mental pressure builds not from the work itself, but from trying to control what hasn't happened yet. Here's the shift. You still do the work. You still show up. You still give effort. But you stop attaching your peace to the result. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're not dependent on the outcome to feel okay. Big difference. Because when you're attached to outcomes, your mood goes up and down constantly. Things go well, you feel good. Frustrated, you're unstable, always reacting to results. But when you focus only on what you control, your state becomes steady. You measure your day differently. Not by results, but by effort. Did I do what I needed to do? That's the question. And honestly, that's freeing, because now your progress is always in your hands. You don't have to wait for external validation. You don't have to rely on perfect outcomes. You just focus on showing up. Let me give you a real example. Someone criticizes you. Your mind instantly reacts. You start thinking about what they said, why they said it, whether it's true, how to respond. But pause. Ask yourself, can I control what they think? No. Can I control what they said? No. So what's left? Your response. That's it. You can either carry it with you all day, or let it go. You can react emotionally, or stay steady. You can waste energy on it, or move forward. That's the power of this habit. It simplifies everything. It removes unnecessary weight from your mind. But I'll be honest with you, this isn't easy at first. Your mind will keep going back to things you can't control. It's used to it. That's the default pattern. So you have to remind yourself, again and again, actually, in my control right now. Bring your focus back. Not once. Repeatedly. Over time, this becomes natural. You stop overthinking everything. You stop stressing over outcomes. You stop reacting to every situation. And something interesting happens. You become calmer, more focused, more stable. Not because life got easier, but because your mind became clearer. You're no longer trying to control the uncontrollable. You're no longer wasting energy on things that don't move your life forward. You're focused, grounded, in control of what actually matters. And that's the point. You don't need to control everything. You just need to control yourself. Because once you do that, everything else becomes easier to handle. Let's be honest. Overthinking feels productive. It gives you the illusion that you're being careful, smart, prepared. You sit there going over every possible outcome. You analyze every detail. You replay different scenarios in your head. And it feels like you're doing something useful. But most of the time, you're just stuck. Overthinking doesn't move your life forward. It keeps you in the same place, thinking, rethinking, doubting, hesitating. You tell yourself you just need a little more clarity, a little more certainty, a little more time. But clarity rarely comes from thinking more. It comes from doing. Here's the real problem. You're trying to make the perfect decision. One with no risk, no uncertainty, no chance of failure. But that decision doesn't exist. Every choice has unknowns. Every path has risk. And the longer you wait for perfect clarity, the more time you waste standing still. Let me interrupt you here. You don't need to know everything before you move. You just need to know enough. Enough to take the next step. That's it. Think about how many decisions you delay. Starting something new, speaking up, taking action on a goal. Not because you can't do it, but because you keep thinking about it. What if it doesn't work? What if I make the wrong choice? What if I regret it later? So you wait, and while you're waiting, nothing changes. Not real fear. Imagined fear. Scenarios that haven't happened. Problems that don't exist yet. Outcomes you can't predict. And your mind treats all of it as real. That's why it feels heavy. because you're carrying possibilities as if they're facts. Here's the shift. Instead of trying to eliminate uncertainty, learn to move with it. Accept that you won't have all the answers. Accept that some things will go wrong. Accept that you might need to adjust later, and move anyway. This doesn't mean acting blindly. It means making a decision based on what you know right now, then taking action, then learning from what happens. Because action gives you clarity that thinking never will. You can think about something for weeks, but one step forward will teach you more than all of that thinking combined. Let's make it practical. You're deciding whether to start something. Your mind starts listing pros and cons. You go back and forth. You hesitate. You wait. Instead, simplify it. Ask yourself, is this aligned with what I want? If the answer is yes, take a step. Not the whole journey, just the next step. You don't need to commit to everything. You just need to move forward. Another thing, overthinking often comes from fear of making mistakes. You don't want to choose wrong. You don't want to fail. You don't want to look back and regret it. But mistakes are part of the process. They're not something to avoid completely. They're something to learn from. If you try to avoid every mistake, you end up avoiding action. And avoiding action is the biggest mistake of all. Stoicism teaches something simple here. Focus on your intention. Make the best decision you can with the information you have. Then accept the outcome. Learn from it. Adjust if needed. Move forward. That's it. No endless loops. No constant second-guessing. No replaying the same thoughts. Overthinking also kills confidence. Because every time you hesitate, you send a signal to yourself, I'm not sure. I don't trust my decision. I need more validation. But when you act, even in small ways, you build trust in yourself. You prove that you can decide, that you can handle outcomes, that you can adjust if needed. Confidence doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. And let's clear something up. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to feel confident first. Those things come after you take action, not before. So the next time you catch yourself overthinking, pause. Notice the pattern. Notice how your mind is trying to delay action by creating more thoughts. Then simplify it. What's the next step I can take? Not the whole plan, not the perfect outcome. Just the next step. Even if it's small. Even if it feels uncertain. Even if it's not perfect. Because progress doesn't come from perfect decisions. It comes from consistent action. The truth is simple. Overthinking feels safe, but it keeps you stuck. Action feels uncomfortable, but it moves you forward. And the moment you stop waiting for perfect clarity and start moving with imperfect decisions, you begin to rebuild your life, one step at a time. Let me say this straight. If you can't sit alone with your own thoughts, your mind is not in control yet. And I don't mean extreme isolation. I mean simple moments. No phone, no music, no distractions, just you. Most people avoid this, not because they're busy, but because silence feels uncomfortable. The moment things get quiet, your mind gets louder. Thoughts start showing up. Things you've been ignoring, things you didn't want to think about, things that feel unresolved. So what do? You reach for something, your phone, a video, background noise, anything to escape that feeling. Let me stop you here. This matters. Every time you avoid being alone, you teach your mind that silence is something to escape. And over time, you become dependent on distraction. You don't think clearly unless there's noise. You don't feel comfortable unless something is playing. You don't sit still unless you're forced to. That's not calm. That's dependency. Being alone is where you understand your mind. Not when it's distracted, not when it's entertained, but when it has nothing to hide behind. At first, it won't feel good. Let's be honest. You'll feel restless. You'll feel like you need to do something. Your mind will jump from thought to thought. You'll get the urge to check your phone every few seconds. That's normal. That's what an untrained mind does. But if you stay there, without escaping, something starts to change. Slowly. your thoughts begin to settle, not all at once, but gradually. You start noticing patterns, how your mind reacts, what it focuses on, what it keeps returning to. And this awareness, this is where control begins. Because you can't control something you don't understand. And you don't understand your mind if you're constantly distracting it. Here's the shift. Stop trying to fill every moment. You don't need constant stimulation. You don't need to be entertained all the time. You don't need noise to function. Start small, without your phone. No music, no scrolling, no background anything. Just sit. You don't need to do anything special. You don't need a perfect technique. Just observe. Notice your thoughts. Let them come and go. Don't follow them. Don't fight them either. Just let them exist. At first, it will feel slow, maybe even uncomfortable. But that discomfort is important, because it shows you how used you are to distraction. Over time, that discomfort fades. You stop needing constant input. You stop reacting to every thought. You become more stable. And something else happens. You start thinking more clearly, because your mind is no longer crowded. No constant noise, no endless input, just space. That space allows you to reflect, to understand your decisions, to process your experiences, think without pressure. This is why being alone is powerful. Not because it isolates you, but because it connects you to your own mind. And once you're comfortable with that, everything changes. You don't need distractions to feel okay. You don't rely on constant input to stay occupied. You become steady. This also affects how you deal with the world. Because when you're comfortable alone, you don't seek constant validation. You don't depend on others to feel stable. You don't react as strongly to external situations. You become grounded, independent, in control of your state. Most people skip this step. They try to build discipline, focus, calm, but they avoid being alone. That doesn't work. Because if you can't handle silence, you can't handle your own mind. Stoicism teaches you to face reality as it is. And part of that reality is your own thoughts, your own patterns, your own reactions. You don't run from them. You observe them, understand them, and slowly, you gain control over them. The truth is simple. If you always need distraction, your mind will always be restless. But if you learn to sit in silence, even for a few minutes a day, you build something rare. A mind that doesn't panic in stillness, a mind that doesn't depend on noise, a mind that stays calm even when there's nothing happening. And that kind of mind, that's the one that can handle anything. Let's keep this simple. Your life doesn't fall apart all at once. It breaks in small moments. Moments where you said you'd do something and didn't. You tell yourself, I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, you delay it. I'll do it later. Later turns into never. At first it doesn't feel like a big deal. It's just one task, one plan, one promise. But it doesn't stay small. Because every time you don't follow through, you send a message to yourself. I don't do what I say. And the more that repeats, the weaker your self-trust becomes. You stop believing your own words. You stop taking your own plans seriously. You stop expecting discipline from yourself. Let me interrupt you here. This is important. Confidence doesn't come from motivation. It comes from self-trust. And self-trust is built when your actions match your words. Think about it. If someone constantly tells you they'll do something and never follows through, you stop trusting them. You stop relying on them. You stop taking them seriously. Now flip that. When you don't follow through, your mind starts seeing you the same way. Unreliable, inconsistent, all talk, no action. That's why this habit matters so much. Not because the task is important, but because keeping your word to yourself is. Start small. Don't try to change everything at once. That's where people fail. They set big goals, make big promises, and then don't follow through. Instead, lower the scale. Make simple commitments. I'll wake up at this time. I'll work on this for 20 minutes. I'll finish this one task today. And then do it. No excuses. No delays. No negotiating with yourself. Because the moment you start negotiating, you're already losing control. You say, I'll do it later. I'm not feeling it right now. I'll start tomorrow instead. That's not logic. That's avoidance. Discipline is not about feeling ready. It's about acting even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Let's be real, you're not going to feel motivated every day. Some days you'll feel tired, distracted, unfocused. That's normal, but your habits shouldn't depend on your mood. If they do, they'll never stay consistent. This is where people confuse motivation with discipline. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline stays, and discipline is built, one action at a time. Every time you follow through, you strengthen it. Every time you don't, you weaken it. There's no middle ground. Doing what you said doesn't mean doing it perfectly. It means doing it anyway. It's not your best work, even if it feels slow. Even if it's not how you imagined it, because progress is better than delay. Action is better than perfection. A lot of people wait until they can do something properly, until they have more time, more energy, better conditions. But those conditions rarely come. And even if they do, the habit of delaying stays. So instead of waiting for the perfect moment, use the moment you have. Do what you can. Finish what you start. Move forward. Over time, this changes how you see yourself. You stop doubting your own words. You stop second-guessing your plans. You trust that when you say something, you mean it. That trust becomes confidence. Not loud confidence, not fake confidence, real confidence. The kind that comes from knowing you follow through, and that affects everything. Your work, your decisions, your mindset, your direction in life. Because now you're not relying on motivation. You're relying on yourself. The truth is simple. Your life improves when your actions become consistent. Not perfect, consistent. And consistency starts here. Doing what you said you would do, even when it's small, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it. Because every time you follow through, you rebuild something most people lose. And once you have that, you don't need to rely on anything else. You don't need to respond to everything that happens around you. That sounds obvious, but in real life, it's where most people lose control. Something small happens, a comment, a look, a message, a delay, and instantly your mind wants to react. Not because it's important, but because it feels immediate. That feeling tricks you into thinking it deserves your attention. But here's the truth. Urgency is often an illusion. Your mind is wired to respond quickly. It picks up signals and turns them into reactions without asking whether they matter. And if you don't step in, you follow that pattern automatically. Think about how many times your mood changed because of something minor. You were fine, then something small happened, and suddenly your energy dropped. Not because the situation was serious, but because you gave it space in your mind. That's the cost of reacting to everything. Every reaction takes energy. Every response pulls your focus. And when you keep doing that, you end up mentally exhausted without doing anything meaningful. Let me be clear. Ignoring everything is not the goal. Control is. You choose what deserves your response. You decide what gets your attention. That's where stability comes from. Most people don't pause. They react first, then think later. And by the time they realize it didn't matter, the energy is already gone. The emotion already happened. The moment already passed. Instead, slow it down. When something triggers you, don't jump into it immediately. Just take a second. Notice the reaction forming. That alone changes the outcome. Ask yourself a simple question. Does this actually matter? Not emotionally, logically, because a lot of things feel important in the moment, but have no real impact on your life. A random opinion, a small inconvenience, a situation that will be forgotten in a few hours. If it doesn't matter later, it doesn't deserve your energy now. This habit takes practice. Your mind will still push you to react. It's used to that pattern. But every time you pause instead of reacting, you weaken that habit. You start creating space between what happens and how you respond. And in that space, you gain control. You don't get pulled into every situation. You don't feel the need to explain yourself all the time. You don't respond to every comment or defend every point. You stay steady. That steadiness is powerful. Not loud, not dramatic, just controlled. People who react to everything are easy to disturb. Their mood changes constantly. Their focus breaks easily. their energy is scattered. But when you stop reacting to everything, you become harder to affect. Your mind stays clear. Your energy stays focused. Your actions become intentional. That doesn't mean you never respond. It means when you do respond, it's a choice, not a reaction. And that difference changes everything. Because now you're not controlled by what happens around you. No one likes slow progress. Let's just be honest about that. You start something new, and a part of you expects to feel a difference quickly. You want to see change, even if it's small. Something that tells you, this is working. But most of the time, that doesn't happen. You put in effort, and nothing noticeable changes. You repeat the habit, and it still feels the same. Days pass, sometimes weeks, and it feels like you're stuck in the same place. That's the moment where people quit. Not because they're incapable, not because the method is wrong, but because the results are too slow for their expectations. Here's what you need to understand. Real progress is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up dramatically. It builds in the background, slowly, without giving you constant feedback. That's why it feels like nothing is happening. But something is happening. Every time you repeat a habit, you're reinforcing a pattern. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you're shifting your mindset. Every time you show up, even when you don't feel like it, you're building something internal. You just don't see it immediately. Let me explain it in a simple way. Imagine you're improving your focus. The first few days, nothing feels different. Your mind still wanders. You still get distracted. It feels pointless. But if you keep going, something subtle starts to change. You don't notice it in the moment, but your reactions begin to slow down. Your awareness improves slightly. Your ability to bring your focus back becomes easier. It's not dramatic, but it's real. This is how growth works. It's gradual, and because it's gradual, it's easy to underestimate. That's the danger. When you don't see results, your mind starts doubting the process. You think, maybe this isn't working, or maybe this isn't for me. So you stop. And the moment you stop, all that slow progress resets. You go back to where you started, not because you failed, but because you didn't stay long enough to see the result. This is why patience is not optional. It's necessary. You don't get strong by working out once. You don't build discipline in a few days. You don't rebuild your life in a week. It takes time, more time than you expect. And that's where most people lose. They underestimate how long it takes and overestimate how fast it should happen. So here's the shift. Stop measuring your progress by visible results. Start measuring it by consistency. Did you show up today? Did you do what you said you would do? Did you stick to the habit even when it felt pointless? That's progress. Not the outcome, the repetition. Because repetition is what creates change. Another thing you need to accept is that progress doesn't feel exciting most of the time. It feels boring, repetitive, sometimes even frustrating. You're doing the same things again and again without immediate reward. That's normal. That's part of the process. If you only rely on excitement, you won't last. You need something stronger than motivation. You need commitment. Commitment to the process, even when it feels slow. Even when it feels like nothing is happening. Because that's exactly when it's working. The truth is simple. Fast results don't last. Slow progress does. It changes your habits, your mindset, your behavior over time. And once that change is built, it stays. You don't lose it easily. So the next time you feel like you're not moving forward, pause for a second. You are, just not in a way that's obvious yet. Stay consistent. Keep going. Let the process do its work. Because one day, without even realizing when it happened, you'll look back and see how far you've come. This is the habit that quietly separates people who stay stuck from people who actually move forward. Not talent, not luck, not even motivation. Just this simple shift. What can I improve today? Most people don't live like that. They live in a loop. They think about the past, replaying mistakes, wishing they had done things differently. Or they jump into the future, stressing about what might happen, what could go wrong, what they need to fix later. And in all of that thinking, today gets ignored. But your life doesn't change in the past or the future. It changes right here, right now. in what you choose to do with this moment. Let me slow this down a bit. You wake up, and your mind is already active. It wants to do everything at once, fix everything at once, become a better version of yourself instantly. That pressure sounds productive, but it actually does the opposite. It overwhelms you. And when you feel overwhelmed, you do nothing at all. That's the trap. So instead of trying to fix your whole life, shrink the focus. Just today. Not your entire personality. Not your entire future. Just today. Ask yourself something simple. What's one thing I can improve right now? It doesn't need to be big. In fact, it shouldn't be big. Big changes without structure usually collapse. Small changes done consistently actually stick. Maybe it's your focus. You decide to stop switching between tasks every few minutes. Maybe it's your discipline. You decide to finish one thing before starting another. Maybe it's your reaction. You notice when you're about to respond emotionally and you pause instead. That's improvement. It doesn't look dramatic from the outside, but internally it matters a lot, because every small improvement you make today becomes part of your baseline tomorrow. And this is where people miss the point. They think progress should feel obvious, like a sudden shift, something they can clearly see. But real change is quieter than that. It builds slowly. You don't notice it while it's happening. You only notice it when you realize you're no longer reacting the same way you used to. You're not thinking the same way you used to. You're not stuck in the same patterns anymore. That didn't happen in one moment. It happened through a series of small improvements you made without overthinking them. Now here's something important. Don't complicate this habit. People tend to overthink improvement too. They start creating long lists, detailed plans, overloaded goals for the day, and then they feel pressure again. That's not the point. The point is clarity, not complexity. One thing, one focus, one small improvement, and then actually doing it. Because thinking about improvement is easy. Planning improvement is easy. But doing it in real time, especially when you don't feel like it, that's where it matters. And let's be honest, some days you won't feel like improving anything. You'll feel tired, distracted, not in the mood. That's normal. But this habit isn't about perfect conditions. It's about showing up anyway and still choosing one small thing to refine. Even if it's minimal. Even if it feels insignificant. Because consistency is what builds identity. When you repeatedly choose improvement over comfort, something shifts inside you. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start becoming someone who actually adjusts, learns, and grows in real time. That's powerful. And over time, this habit changes how you see your entire life. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by everything you need to fix, you start focusing only on what's in front of you. Not because problems disappear, but because your attention becomes sharper. You stop scattering your energy everywhere. You start directing it. And that's where real progress begins. Not in pressure, but in focus. So don't wait for a perfect plan. Don't wait for a perfect mindset. Just look at today and ask yourself one simple question. What can I improve right now? Then do that. Let's talk about something people don't take seriously enough. What you're letting into your mind all day. Because honestly, your mind isn't just thinking on its own. It's reacting to what you feed it. And most people are feeding it way too much. Too many videos, too many opinions, too many conversations, too many distractions switching every few seconds. And then they wonder why they feel scattered, unfocused, or mentally tired all the time. It's not random. It's overload. Your mind has limits. It can only process so much before it starts feeling noisy. And when everything is coming in at once, nothing feels clear anymore. You don't think deeply. You skim thoughts. You don't focus properly. You jump around. You don't feel grounded. You feel restless without even knowing why. And the frustrating part? Most of it feels normal now because everyone lives like this. But normal doesn't mean healthy. Let me slow this down. Think about your average day. You wake up, check your phone, messages, notifications, updates. Before you've even formed your own thoughts, you've already taken in a flood of other people's content. Then it continues. Videos, scrolling, background noise, switching attention constantly. Your brain never gets a break. And here's the issue. Your mind doesn't reset automatically, it just keeps stacking input on top of input. So by the end of the day, you're not really tired in a normal way. You're mentally full, overloaded, cluttered. And when your mind is full, your clarity drops. This is where simplification becomes powerful. Not by removing everything from your life, but by being selective. You don't need more information. You need better control over what you allow in. Because everything you consume influences how you think. Even if you don't notice it directly, what you watch shapes your attention. What you listen to shapes your emotions. What you read shapes your mindset. And if all of that is random, your mind becomes random too. So here's the habit. Start reducing unnecessary input. Not in a strict or extreme way, just intentionally. Ask yourself, do I really need this right now? Or am I just filling silence? That question alone changes a lot. Because most of the time you're not actually learning or growing from what you consume. You're just avoiding stillness. And stillness is where clarity actually comes from. Let me be clear. You don't need a completely quiet life, but you do need space. Space where your mind isn't constantly reacting to something new every few seconds. Because without space, your thoughts never settle. And if they never settle, you never really understand what you actually think. You just repeat what you've absorbed. This habit is also about attention. Your attention is your energy, and right now it's probably being pulled in too many directions. Every notification takes a piece of it. Every scroll takes a piece of it. Every random input takes a piece of it. And by the end of the day, there's very little left for what actually matters. That's why focus feels difficult. Not because you can't focus, but because your attention is already scattered before you even try. So instead of trying to force focus, simplify what's competing for it. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Stop switching between too many things at once. Reduce the noise that doesn't serve you. Not forever, just enough to give your mind breathing room. And something interesting happens when you do this. At first, it feels a bit empty, like something is missing. You think more clearly. You feel less mentally rushed. You notice your thoughts instead of being dragged by them. That's not magic. That's just your mind finally having space to function properly. Another part of this habit is being honest about what actually matters. A lot of what we consume is just habit, not necessity. You open apps without thinking. You watch things without intention. You scroll because it's automatic, not because it adds value. So part of simplifying your inputs is becoming aware of that automatic behavior and gently breaking it. Not by restriction, but by awareness. Because when you become aware, you get a choice. And once you have a choice, you can decide what deserves your attention and what doesn't. That's where control starts. Over time, this habit changes something deeper. You stop feeling mentally full all the time. You stop reacting to everything instantly. You start thinking more clearly, even in normal situations. And your mind feels less chaotic. Not because life changed, but because your inputs did. The truth is simple. A cluttered mind doesn't need more information. It needs less noise. And when you simplify what goes in, you naturally improve what comes out. Your thoughts, your decisions, your focus, your calm. So don't try to fix everything in your head. Most of the stress people carry doesn't actually belong to today. It belongs to tomorrow, or last week, or some version of life that hasn't even happened yet. And the mind just keeps stacking it all together like it's happening right now. That's where things start to feel heavy. Because suddenly, you're not dealing with one day. You're mentally living in 10 different timelines at once. Let me slow this down with you for a second. Right now, in this exact moment, there's only one thing you can actually live in. Today. Not next month, not next year, not someday when everything is better. Just today. But the mind doesn't like that simplicity. It keeps pulling you away. It says things like, what about the future? What if this doesn't work out? What if I fail later? And now you're no longer present. You're mentally scattered across things you cannot touch right now. Here's the problem with that way of thinking. When your attention is everywhere, your power is nowhere. You're thinking about everything, but not doing anything properly in front of you. And because of that, even simple tasks start feeling overwhelming, not because they are difficult, but because your mind is overloaded. So this habit is very direct. Bring your life back to today. Not in a motivational way, not in a vague be present way, but in a practical way. Ask yourself, what actually matters for today only? Not my whole life plan. Just today. When you start doing this, something changes immediately. Your mind becomes quieter. Not because problems disappear, but because you've removed the extra weight of imaginary problems. You stop carrying future pressure into present moments. Let me give you a real example. You wake up thinking about everything you need to fix in your life. Career, goals, money, relationships, all of it at once. And before you've even done anything, you already feel tired. That's not real effort. That's mental overload. Now compare that to a different approach. You wake up and say, today I'm just going to handle what's in front of me. One task, one focus, one direction. Suddenly your mind relaxes a bit, not because life became easier, but because you stopped trying to solve everything at the same time. This is where most people go wrong. They confuse thinking with progress. They think if I think enough about my future, I'm preparing for it. But in reality, too much thinking drains the energy you need for action today. Stoic thinking is different. It's not about ignoring the future. It's about refusing to let the future steal your attention from today. Because today is where your control actually exists. You can't fix last year. You can't guarantee next year. But you can absolutely decide what you do in the next few hours. And that's enough. Another important part of this habit is stopping mental replay. People waste so much energy rerunning old conversations, old mistakes, old situations. They think they're learning from it, but most of the time they're just reliving it emotionally. And that keeps them stuck in something that already ended. Focusing on today breaks that loop, because you can't fully live in today while dragging yesterday with you. You have to choose. Either you stay mentally in the past, or you come back to what's actually happening now. And here's something you'll notice over time. When you focus only on today, your decisions get better. Not because you suddenly became smarter, but because you stopped overloading your mind. Clarity doesn't come from thinking more. It comes from removing unnecessary noise. It will try to pull you back into overthinking. That's normal, because it's used to being everywhere except the present. But over time, it adjusts, and slowly something shifts. You start feeling lighter, more focused, less mentally crowded. You still have responsibilities, you still have goals, you still have plans, but you stop carrying all of them at the same time. You deal with them in order, not all at once in your head. That's the real power of this habit. It doesn't add anything to your life. It removes unnecessary mental weight, and that alone changes everything. Because when your attention is fully in today, your actions become sharper, your decisions become clearer, and your mind finally stops fighting itself. So keep it simple. Come back to today. Handle today, live today properly, and let the rest unfold one step at a time. Let's talk about something most people quietly run from. Discomfort. Not the dramatic kind, not extreme situations. I mean everyday discomfort. The small things you avoid without even noticing. The hard conversations, the awkward moments, the tasks you keep delaying, the feelings you don't want to sit with. You know what I mean. Your mind is very quick to protect you from anything that feels uncomfortable. It offers shortcuts, distractions, excuses, anything to avoid that uneasy feeling. And at first, it feels helpful. You think you're just taking a break or not in the mood right now. But if you look closely, it becomes a pattern. You avoid discomfort today, and it shows up again tomorrow. Bigger, heavier, harder to ignore. That's how avoidance works. It doesn't remove the discomfort. It delays it and multiplies it. Now here's the part people don't like hearing. Growth is uncomfortable. Not sometimes, almost always. Because anything that changes you in a real way requires you to step outside what feels easy. And your mind doesn't like that. It prefers familiar territory, even if that familiar place isn't helping you anymore. Let me slow this down. You want discipline, but waking up early feels uncomfortable. You want focus, but sitting still without distraction feels uncomfortable. You want confidence, but speaking up feels uncomfortable. So what happens? You delay all of it, not because you don't care, but because discomfort shows up first. And most people listen to that feeling immediately. They treat discomfort like a signal to stop. But Stoicism teaches something different. Discomfort is not a stop sign, it's a training signal. It shows you where you're avoiding growth. Think about it. Every area of your life you want to improve is sitting right behind something uncomfortable. That's how development works. If it were easy, everyone would already be doing it. Now let's get practical. Instead of running from discomfort, you start doing something different. You stay with it a little longer than usual. Not in a dramatic way. Not forcing yourself into misery. Just not escaping immediately. You feel the urge to delay something, you do it anyway. You feel awkward in a conversation, you stay present instead of shutting down. You feel resistance toward a task, you start it anyway, even if it's small. That's it. You're not trying to eliminate discomfort, you're learning not to obey it instantly. And this is where change begins. Because every time you stay with discomfort and don't run from it, your mind learns something new. It learns that discomfort is not dangerous. It's just a sensation. It rises, it stays for a moment, and it passes. But if you always avoid it, your mind learns the opposite. It learns that discomfort must be escaped. And that makes you weaker over time, not stronger. Let me be honest with you. Avoidance feels good in the moment. That's why people do it. But the result is always the same. You end up dealing with the same situations later, just with more pressure attached. So the question becomes simple. Do you want short-term comfort or long-term control? Because you don't get both at the same time. Now here's something important. Accepting discomfort doesn't mean you stop feeling it. That's not realistic. You will still feel resistance. You will still feel hesitation. You will still feel that internal pushback. The difference is what you do next. Do you act based on the feeling, or do you act based on your intention? That's the shift. And the more you choose intention over comfort, the more stable you become. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop being controlled by temporary feelings. Over time, something interesting happens. Things that used to feel difficult start to feel normal, not because they changed, but because you changed your response to them. That's growth. Not elimination of discomfort, but familiarity with it. And once you reach that point, you stop being afraid of starting things. You stop overthinking every decision. You stop waiting for the perfect feeling before taking action. You just move. Even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because now you understand something most people never fully accept. Discomfort is not the enemy. It's part of the process. And the moment you stop avoiding it, you stop delaying your own progress. Let's end this on something very real. Not motivational in a loud way. Not dramatic. Just honest. Because this is the habit that actually decides everything else. You can understand Stoicism. You can learn discipline. You can build routines. You can even make progress for a while. But the real test comes here, when you don't feel like continuing. Not on your good days, on your normal days, your tired days, your unmotivated days, your nothing is working days. That's where most people stop, not because they can't continue, but because they don't feel like it anymore, and that feeling becomes the excuse. Here's something important you need to see clearly. Feelings are not instructions, they are signals. They tell you how you feel in the moment, not what you should do. But most people treat them like commands. I don't feel like it today, so I won't do it. I'm not in the mood, so I'll skip it. I'll start again tomorrow. And tomorrow becomes another delay. This is where consistency breaks, not because life got harder, but because discipline started depending on mood, and mood is unstable. It changes constantly, so anything built on it will also stay unstable. Let's be honest about progress. There are days when you feel sharp, focused, ready to move, and there are days when everything feels slow. Your mind is heavy, your energy is low. Even simple tasks feel like effort. That's normal. But what you do on those days matters more than anything else. because that's where your identity is built. Anyone can show up when they feel good. That's easy. But when you show up on the days you don't feel like it, something changes inside you. You stop being someone who depends on motivation. You become someone who relies on discipline, and discipline is not loud. It doesn't feel exciting. It's quiet. It's just you doing what needs to be done without waiting for perfect conditions. Let me slow this down. Imagine you plan something important. You know it matters. You know it moves you forward, but today you don't feel like doing it. Now you have a choice. Stop or continue. Most people stop here. Not because the task is impossible, but because resistance feels uncomfortable, and the mind always chooses comfort unless trained not to. But if you continue anyway, something small but powerful happens. You prove to yourself that your actions are not controlled by mood. And every time you do that, you weaken the habit of quitting. Slowly, but it builds. This is what people don't see. Discipline is not built in big moments. It's built in small decisions, where no one is watching. When you continue even though you don't feel like it. When you finish something instead of leaving it half done. When you stay consistent even when there's no reward yet. Over time, this creates stability. Because now your behavior is no longer unpredictable. You're not waiting for the right feeling to act. You just act. And that changes your entire mindset. You stop arguing with yourself every day. You stop negotiating with your own habits. You stop saying, "I'll do it later" all the time. Later becomes now. And now becomes action. Let's be clear about something else too. This doesn't mean forcing yourself into burnout. It doesn't mean ignoring rest. It means not letting temporary feelings control long-term direction. There's a difference. Rest is intentional. Avoidance is emotional. You need to learn that difference, because if you always listen to discomfort, you will never grow. Growth feels uncomfortable sometimes, not because something is wrong, but because it's unfamiliar, and the mind resists unfamiliar things. So when you push through, you're not ignoring yourself, you're training yourself. And slowly, something interesting happens. You stop needing motivation. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop depending on emotional highs to take action. You just move, calmly, consistently, without overthinking it. That's real strength. Not intensity, not bursts of energy. When it's quiet, even when it's hard, even when no one notices. So if you take one thing from all of this, take this. Don't break your direction just because your mood changed. Your mood will change again tomorrow, and the day after that. If you follow it, you'll keep stopping and starting your whole life. But if you stay consistent, even imperfectly, you build something rare, reliability with yourself. And once you have that, everything else becomes easier. Because you're no longer someone who starts and stops.